Hi, hello, and welcome back to Lancer, our favorite mech tabletop RPG, where today we're talking about the Minotaur, the one that's screwing with the space out of the space and time combination of one of Horus's other chassis, and messing with space aplenty in many different ways. But overall, crowd control, punishing movement. Some of this is just through hacking and disabling systems, some of it's more metaphysical means of hacking and messing with tech, and other times you are just, again, hacking reality and having people teleport or not teleport. You're just bending space. In fact, for most of the systems, we don't even have a proper, visual descriptor of what it's doing. Fun descriptors, but not necessarily the most useful in describing how the effect is in place. Horus techno-paracausal magic. Hacking shenanigans. But yes, our next Horus chassis. So, as a general reminder, we're going through each of the manufacturers, so IPSN, and then SSC, then Horus, and next is HA, and then down each of those respective rows in alphabetical order, from the core book first. We're covering everything in the license, but first covering the chassis itself, so the core thing you get at LL2, where all the other systems you can apply onto any of these other chassis, as like a starting point or the core of the mech. But some more about that mech. So, a lot of its descriptors are pretty vague, so most of the bulk lore is in its initial descriptor, and that's also, again, mostly Union just trying to piece it together. And pointing to that piecing together, this is an early chassis pattern group within the Horus license, as in Horus as a manufacturer in technicality. Because before that, the first thing that was identifiably just Horus was anything that was the Goblin chassis or using Goblin components. Wherever Horus got that is still well spread through their various groups and cells, and you can identify a Goblin still. That's like the one secure pattern in Horus. At least at the start, it might be different now. But it's with the Minotaur that Union began to notice these different cells and the disorganized nature of Horus begin to spread and be reflected in its chassis and its designs. Because while there were common systems between the Minotaur, there was no base chassis or design that they were using. In fact, they were even theorized to be recycling some components or designs from the Goblin, as being one of the few core things holding it together. But if I was to take a crack at what's consistent, I'd say the strange nature of its internals, but also the horns. I mean, you have to have that if you're being named the Minotaur, right? But the strange nature of its internals. There's some traits that reflect it later on, but when Union was scavenging one of these and taking it apart, trying to see how it worked, the interior components would fill a space of orders of magnitude larger than the actual whole. In short, it's bigger on the inside, and this applies to all of them. It's not just screwing with space to disable its opponents, it's also internally screwing with space to host itself and to function. And here's the Minotaur stats as compared to the Everest, the general starting frame, you get LL0. But the Minotaur is a war-based chassis. It's meant to host a lot of these offensive systems. Not necessarily weaponry, but a lot of its own infernal programming. A great disabler, so in some ways antenna, but also warping space. For that battlefield role and the fact it's meant to be a host for various systems, that bonus to tech attack, save, and system points are not bad. In fact, you are going to be using all of those system points. Health and E-defense as well being increased is a nice bonus. Being able to handle yourself on that battlefield, having your own tech systems defend against others. Sensors being low does kind of hinder it, especially due to some of the other systems requiring things within sensors. And lastly, touching on that repair. Difficulty to repair in the middle of battle because its components don't function in space. Yeah, I don't know how you'd repair a mech whose internals are larger than the external whole. But those are the general stats. You've seen the arrows, taken a picture of reference. Moving on. So the Minotaur is a size 1 and is not your gunboat. Again, this is kind of your caster equivalent. Similar to the Goblin, it's a lot more about the effects it's placing on people or ways it can manipulate areas. But it does have a main aux mount, so you can still put a weapon on it. And now we get to some fun bits. So, for its traits, the first one we have invert cockpit. This is goofy. So again, with the internals not really making any sense, and it's screwing with space and some teleporting abilities later on, you don't really board it normally. I mean, you can, potentially. You can still mechanically do that, but the fastest way to get in and out of the chassis is to just be there. Invert the cockpit to go outside or to be taken in, to go wherever that larger space is being stored, which is, I don't know where I'm going to put it, so I'm going to put it here. Orders of magnitude larger is the way Union describes the interior of a Minotaur. So your cockpit, or the exact nature of your cockpit, can be very strange. And kind of up to you, because it doesn't have to be reasonably within the chassis itself. It doesn't have to fit in the hole. So you could have it be like a small command room, a fancy, techno lounge. You can have it be a ton of crazy things, because you don't have to abide by the physics external to the hole. So go crazy. In the comments especially. Back to the actual mechanics of it, once per round you can freely enter or exit your chassis. This is done as a free action, and you can get back in your mech. It just isn't a free action anymore. One of the other nice bonuses for your mech itself, if it's operating separate from you, it's not impaired when you eject. So if you have an NHP or other AI running around in there, it can still keep on fighting. It's not really physically bothered by having to stop and let you out. You just appear next to it as it's still going. Next up is Internal Manifold, which ties back into the cockpit again. While you're piloting the Minotaur, you cannot be harmed in any way. At all, even from the crazy pirate NPC ability. Even if your mech is entirely destroyed, or even if it blows up, just detonates, and if it's just gone, you just appear there safely. And for the last trait, Localized Maze. This is you screwing with space just passively around you. No hostile characters can move through your space for any reason. They just can't. You're an immovable object to their seemingly unstoppable force. Well, now actually shown to be stoppable. Secondly, whenever any hostile character moves past you, they are engaged, regardless of size, and must stop moving immediately, as they're kind of like trapped next to you. Doesn't matter if they're dashing past or something. You're rerouted to staying next to the Minotaur. But because there's no descriptor, this can be worded in different ways. Either you like passively hacking their systems, kind of changing what they're targeting, or warping the physical space around you so no matter what direction they're trying to leave or move past you, they just can't. It always ends next to you. Like, let's take the engaged example. They're moving past you, they're boosting. It's a Nelson going just across the map. They move to the full distance in their perspective, but they end right next to you, is a way it could be worded, but there's no descriptor. And now we're at the core power of the Minotaur, the Metaphysical Maze, which actually gives you two different abilities. There's a passive and an active. And as for its descriptor on what it's doing, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, there's not too many helpful visual descriptors. But for the first passive, which itself is Metaphysical Maze, it is a quick action with the initial trigger of having to target someone you were successful on a tech attack against. And when this succeeds, the target's movement is affected depending on what effects they're already under, until the end of your next turn. So if the target doesn't have any effect on them, Metaphysical Maze slows them. If the target is already slowed, Metaphysical Maze impairs them. If the target is impaired, Metaphysical Maze stuns them. Stun sucks. Though you can only stun a target this way once per combat. Not the general ability, but the individual target can't be stunned twice by this ability in the same combat. But no, just good passive CC, and you're going to be making a lot of tech attacks. Or at least can build around making tech attacks with this being your passive. But now for the active of Maze. So it's a full action and you have to pick a target within sensors. And that target is stunned. There is no initial save for at least one round with this ability. They are guaranteed stunned, as their mech systems are hurtled into a metaphysical information trap. What they perceive and can calculate and can comprehend or just be able to hold as reality or physical space breaks down, whether NHP or CompCon, or basic computer and programming as you're trying to wrestle your systems back. Just flashbang them with a metaphysical paradox. At the end of their turn, they can attempt a system save with +3 difficulty dice. And if they fail, on their next turn, they gain 1 accuracy. They still have the +3 difficulty, it just lessens how terrible having 3 difficulty is. But they're stuck this way until they succeed. Not even the rest of the scene. It gets more likely for them to succeed, but they still need to make that roll eventually. There's not something an ally can do to break them out, or remove an effect, or reboot your systems. It's just stuck, paralyzed in this metaphysical trap. But no, having 2 abilities, one a passive, and then an active with a guaranteed stun, that's pretty nasty. Now, kicking off LL1, we have Mesmer charges for 2 system points. Now, with the term charges being thrown around, you've probably guessed it, these are grenades and mines. Of some kind, at least deployables, with the additional tags of unique, limited to, and quick action to use. First, starting with our Mesmer charge, which is not an area attack, it's a single target, range 5. As you chuck it or deploy it, shoot it, however it's delivered, the target has to make a system save against it, or else they become mesmerized. Again, we don't have a really good descriptive description on how this exactly works, but after they fail this save, they can't move anywhere voluntarily except closer to you. So it's not actually the charge they're attracted to or mesmerized by. Whoever you affected this with is mesmerized by you. Your mech, your chassis, you're their anchor in this reality. All of this until the end of their next turn. Next up is the Mesmer Mine, a size half object that you place down, it's a mine, with its effect hitting a burst 2 area, requiring a system save from all targets in it. And even though this says mesmerized, they're mesmerized by the mine itself this time, or disoriented by it. In either case, they're immobilized until the end of their next turn. Stuck next to the mine, comprehending it, mesmerized by it. Next up is some of that good old Horus hacking with the Viral Logic Suite for 2 system points. So this is not a unique tech attack, this is part of an invade action, so already the 2 heat. Unique system with the 2 different codes underneath it. So the first one is a logic bomb. So first you invade a target, and then all characters within burst 2 of that initial target need to make a system save. All characters of your choice around the target. And after failing this save, they are all slowed until they end their turn not next to an adjacent ally, potentially forcing a group of enemies to scramble, allowing you to pick them off individually, or probably more helpfully, on an ally. so any enemies that they're stuck in melee with are slowed, allowing them to potentially run away, or maneuver at least. Next up is Banish, which is more a metaphorical banishment. So after hitting your target with this, they take 2 heat for every voluntary space they move to. Up to a maximum of 6, but that's still a good chunk based off the other sources of heat you might be dealing to them. This lasts until the end of the next turn, but this is a punishment to anyone moving. Now kicking off LL2 are the Aggressive System Sync, more fancy tech equipment on the Minotaur, for 2 system points. The first ability under that is the Chains of Prometheus, requiring a full action and a tech attack against your target. On a success, they take 4 heat immediately and then have the chains bound to them. Again, digital, metaphorical, metaphysical. And then for the rest of the scene, they take 2 heat whenever they move range 3 away from you, or more than range 3, drawing them in with those chains. You know, with a lot of these abilities, you could probably build the Minotaur into a melee chassis. They, however, can try to end this effect early with giving a full action and a successful system save. So eating through their action economy at the very least. You can then only target 1 character with this at a time. So you can keep using it, it's not limited, but it will immediately free someone from the chains if you pick another person to chain. Next is Excommunicate. So again, pick a target within sensors, tech attack, full action. And then for the rest of the scene, for the first time in a round, the character moves next to or starts their turn adjacent to an ally. Both of them take 3 heat, them and the ally. This one is forcing your enemies apart from each other, not allowing them to group up or buddy up or use them, namely, as cover. Like if you see a chassis that's being used for cover by a bunch of its allies, hit them with this. And just like Chains of Prometheus, they can spend a full action to attempt a system save to break out, and you can only target 1 character with this at a time. So a lot of the other systems that we just covered can kind of be taken as just fancy hacking, crazy paracausal code, all of that before. This one is just messing with space. Metafold Carver for 2 system points. So, you get 2 new invade actions, the first one being Ophidian Trek, where the target is teleported 1d6 plus 1 spaces towards you. If there's something in the way or in the space that they're meant to occupy, the teleport fails. Again, if you're building this as a melee chassis, pretty good to force an enemy towards you. But like we mentioned with the Goblin, you can target allies with invades, and then they don't suffer any other negatives, it just automatically succeeds as well. So more a buddying up, getting an ally out of trouble, teleporting them towards you, or forcing that enemy into trouble. Now it's this one I was thinking as banishment, but you have Fold Space, where the target immediately disappears from the battlefield until the start of their next turn. They either appear immediately in the space they disappeared from, or as close as possible if it's occupied. Again, this is one you'd more likely use on allies to get them out of trouble or away from an attack that's about to hit. And kicking off LL3, we have Interdiction Field for 3 system points. This is growing your effective control over space around you, basically expanding it into a burst 3 area with a quick action, which also lasts until you deactivate it as a quick action, so it can go past scenes. But in being the beacon for this warp space, you yourself are also slowed in the center. Any hostile characters that enter for the first time in a round or start their turn there must make a system save. On a failure, they are slowed until the end of their next turn. The end of their next turn. Doesn't even matter if they stay within that bubble. If they leave it, they're still slowed. And this doesn't just go to a big slowing effect, messing with how quickly something can travel in it against hostile characters. You are controlling that space around you. You get to pick who can teleport in that space. A bubble simply refusing or allowing entrance or exit based off teleportation. Even bypassing reality, you can't enter the space next to the Minotaur without their permission, or in some cases leave it. Finishing off LL3, we have Law of Blades for 2 system points. Another series of tech options and systems based on the Minotaur. This is a unique system, and to activate any of these 2 different abilities, it's a full action. The first one being Predator-Prey concepts, hijacking the way the systems of a chassis are able to perceive who's friend and who's foe. To trigger it, attack and sensors range, and the target immediately attacks a character or object of your choice, with a weapon of your choice, eating through their reaction. Which might not seem that grand, but if you can pick like an artillerist or someone with a very big scary gun to target a small ally or an objective that they're trying to defend, forcing them to damage it, you can also just pick an ally and have them attack something outside of their turn. Next up is Slave Systems. So it's another attack and sensors range. And just like Predator-Prey concepts, you're making someone do something with a reaction, but this time it's an action, not an attack. An action of your choice between boost, stabilize, improvised attack, grapple, or ram. Once again, against a target of your choice. And while you can force this on an enemy, screwing with whatever their ability is on the end of the battlefield, it can allow for an ally to make one desperate move if they need to, or take advantage of their position at the moment. But no, that is the Minotaur, which I've screwed up pronouncing a good few times. And it is screwy with space. Because of its descriptors lacking any actual visual motifs or too many mechanical descriptions on how it actually functions, you can fill in a lot of blanks and go to the various ways that Horus as it sells have dispersed. Some more into the tech, some more into the strange culty or the paracausal, the crazy technological tricks, or the worshipping of some eldritch power. But it is chock full of systems. This is another big hacking or utility platform, the caster. Minotaur not in the sense of guarding over a maze, though it is doing that, meant for that battlefield role, but it is bringing the maze with it. It is confusing you, it is trapping you, not just within its warping of space, but with its warping of the battlefield, of what you can do, of your own internal systems, bombarded with metaphysical logic. Not only will you not be able to know what you're doing, or where you are, or where you're going, or where the enemy is, relativity being the plaything of some crazed hacker, your systems won't know what's going on. Your AI, your CompCon, your NHP, all of the systems and sensors and logic is telling them something that's not there in front of them. It has them trapped, confused, and scared. A plaything in the Minotaur's maze. Thank you for watching the video on the Minotaur. This was a wonky one. I kept wondering how I was going to flavor it, but I didn't want to seem domineering in what its systems were exactly doing, since especially allows a chance to flavor it however you want. It's weird paracausal shenanigans and a lot of it, but how much does it lean into just hacking, cursed code, or actually hacking or tearing apart reality? Some are more obvious than others in what they're doing and in what manner, but it was when I was reading through its initial descriptor again of the fact that it's when Horus was beginning to splinter in these different cells. It's still the base utility, the hacking, the systems-heavy focus, tied in with the weird descriptors from another, able to lean into the cultist eldritch powers, breaking reality, or into the hackers messing with stuff they really shouldn't. It allows for a lot of options, similar to the cockpit. But in general, I didn't want to step on any toes. This is a great point on how Horus can be interpreted in different ways, or appear in different ways, manifesting in both their order and their tech. But once again, thank you for watching, a thank you to my patrons, and have a nice day.
A deadly laser. Okay.